So, just because the Montreal Canadiens are eliminated from the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs does not mean that we don't have any actually positive news to go out there and talk about with this hockey team. This article actually was published yesterday by James Murphy on rg.org, but because the main headline that everybody was thinking about heading into yesterday was the Habs versus Caps game number 5, and then of course we tossed in a random Sidney Crosby conversation in there too, there was not really too much of a focus on this particular piece. Now, when it comes to what we are talking about, let's dive into it right here. I'll leave a link in the description to this article that talks about both the Habs and the Chicago Blackhawks and one of the players on that team. Take a look at this. He's a smart kid. He's a great goalie. Spencer Knight cheers on Canadiens prospect Jacob Fowler. That's right, baby. Today we are talking about a guy who was at one point seen as one of the best young goaltenders in the NHL, Spencer Knight of the Chicago Blackhawks. A former top prospect in the 2019 NHL Entry Draft, a guy who was up and down in the NHL and the AHL with the Florida Cats, but who took a full backseat last year in 23-24 before suiting up in 23 Florida Panthers games this season, getting a .907 save percentage. He was then traded over to Chicago, .896 save percentage in 15 games over there. Not the best numbers by any means, but then again, Spencer Knight is playing for Chicago. He actually did have a pretty strong showcase to end off the 24-25 campaign with the Hawks. Multiple 930-plus games over here, 919s, 905s, games where he lets in 4 goals against, but he still has an above .900 save percentage. That's reasonably good, I would say. Spencer Knight was pretty hit or miss, and he's a guy who could, once in a while, could pull off a random miraculous night out of his hat, which made him a really interesting fantasy hockey option and somebody that I was consistently streaming throughout the ending portions of the season. But Spencer Knight is a Boston College guy. He played in the NCAA system there for 2 seasons, which is why he is being cited for this interview by James Murphy on rg.org. Let's go out there and read what Knight has to say about Jacob Fowler, who is playing for the Laval Rocket in the 2025 Calder Cup Playoffs. Thanks to Montreal Canadiens goalie Sam Montembeault going down with an injury during Game 3 of the Habs' first-round series against the Capitals, Rockets goalie Cayden was recalled to Montreal. For a second straight game, he backed up Dobesh in Game 5, which he, of course, didn't end up playing. That means that same night yesterday, hotshot prospect Jacob Fowler, who, like Knight, starred at Boston College, will start against the Cleveland Monsters in Game 1 for the Laval Rocket in the North Division semifinals of the Calder Cup Playoffs. Now, this is where things get really interesting, and it's why we're making this entire video here. Not only has Knight been keeping tabs on his fellow Eagles alumni, but he was there for Fowler as the 2023 third-round pick decided whether or not to turn pro in early April. Yeah, I've talked to him, and we text throughout the season, Knight said about Fowler in a recent one-on-one interview. His former Eagles goalie signed a 3-year ELC on April 4th, and Knight did his best to help Fowler understand what was ahead of him. I'll shoot him a text every once in a while and check in on him. I talked to him a little bit before he signed. He just asked me some questions about pro hockey and a little guidance on the process. He's a smart kid. He's a great goalie, and he's on the right track. But I told him that it takes time, and like we discussed before, you need to learn what it means to be a pro before you really make it. He's on the right path now in Laval, and I'm sure he'll be in Montreal soon, but also when the time is right. So there's a little bit of an underrated and somewhat surprising connection that we are seeing here out of pretty much Chicago's goaltender of the future and Jacob Fowler in the Montreal Canadiens organization. This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, it makes sense when you really think about it, but if you were just greeted with the idea with no context behind it, you might be a little bit confused. But Spencer Knight seems like he has been paying attention to the Laval Rocket and the Montreal Canadiens system in regards to the goaltending because he wants to check in on his buddy Jacob Fowler. He's also praising the guy pretty heavily here, which of course bodes well for any Habs fans who want to see more out of this guy. Let's scroll down even more here. Not only has Knight enjoyed seeing Fowler's ascension to pro hockey in his first contract, but after being traded to a team in a rebuild like Chicago, the 13th overall pick in the 2019 draft and 2024 Stanley Cup champion is impressed with the Canadiens' current progress. Yeah, it's cool to see a team like Montreal have success and make the playoffs, and we'll see what they can do, Knight pointed out. Yeah, I think this interview was done way before the Canadiens ended up going down 2-1 or 3-1 to the Caps. But Knight does say here it definitely gives organizations that are in similar positions, like us, the motivation to get to that point. And there's no reason why it can't eventually and definitely do it. It takes a lot of commitment on all ends. Players, management, staff, everyone. It's definitely motivating. We'll get there, but we're going to do it on our own timeline, our own path. It's not like a cookie-cutter thing, like whatever they did or how they did it. We're going to do it our way and go from there, and I feel confident we'll get there. So not only is Spencer Knight going out there and using the Jacob Fowler story to connect with the Montreal Canadiens fans, he's also using the Habs story in general to connect back to Chicago fans and get that POV that says, hey, like this is what a rebuilding team is capable of. Just get a few good top prospects in these drafts, develop them properly, have them come over and have them make an impact, and you can be competitive too. Who knows what Chicago is going to do when they inevitably select whomever it is they take at the top of the 2025 NHL Entry Draft here. Who knows if they get first or if they get second overall like they're currently projecting to be getting. I mean, they could also drop a little bit too. There's a possibility that Chicago goes down to number 3 and then inevitably number 4, depending on the draft lottery results. But ultimately, Chicago is going to get a good player no matter who it is in this draft. Artyom Levshunov still has more to prove. Connor Bedard still has more to prove. Knight, honestly, I don't really think Knight is fully absolved from any improvements here. I know the article said that he was a Stanley Cup champion, which he technically was because he was in the Panthers organization when they won the Cup. But they won the Cup with Stolarz and Bobrovsky, not with Spencer Knight. He didn't play a single game for the Florida Panthers in the 23-24 season when they ended up winning Lord Stanley's Holy Grail. But I guess, really, this is all it boils down to. Spencer Knight has been in an organization that is used to winning and that has such a high standard for themselves. Like the Florida Panthers, it is ultimately what instilled this sort of mindset and overall thought process into his hockey thinking brain. So now going from a championship caliber team to what he is seeing in Chicago, Montreal seems to be the inspiration for him and his Blackhawks folks. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Spencer Knight speaking out about the Montreal Canadiens and the story of Jacob Fowler. What are your thoughts on these comments, and what are your thoughts on whether or not the Chicago Blackhawks can get inspired by the Habs story here as well? I'm really interested in seeing where this discussion goes in the comment section below, but for now I hope you enjoyed this Vrishashrols 99, and bye.